What if the most beautiful moment of your life was actually the beginning of a trap? What if love came into your life softly, smiling, and slowly took away your freedom without you even realizing it? This story is about how something that looked perfect slowly changed everything. My name is Lena. I lived a simple and quiet life in a small town. My days were ordinary but peaceful. Every morning, I woke up early, helped my mother with household work, and then went to my job at a small local shop. I was not rich, and I did not dream of luxury. I only wanted a calm life, respect, and emotional safety. I believed that people like me were safe from big dangers. Before everything changed, my life followed the same routine every day. I knew everyone in my town, and everyone knew me. I felt protected by familiarity. I trusted easily because I had never been hurt deeply before. I believed kindness always meant goodness, and care always meant love. Then Daniel entered my life. He appeared slowly, without noise or drama. He was polite, confident, and very calm. When he spoke, people listened. When he looked at me, I felt noticed in a way I never had before. He asked about my day, my thoughts, and my feelings. He listened carefully, and his attention made me feel important. I did not realize how powerful that feeling was. Daniel said he liked my simplicity. He said I was honest, pure, and different from others. These words stayed in my mind long after he said them. I began to wait for his messages. I smiled when I saw his name on my phone. I told myself this was harmless. I told myself I was just happy. Slowly, he became a part of my daily life. He gave advice about small things, and said he wanted to help me make better decisions. His voice was calm and caring. I thought guidance meant love. I thought protection meant safety. I did not see how often I stopped trusting my own thoughts and started trusting his instead. My family liked him. My friends trusted him. After Daniel became a regular part of my life, my days slowly started to change. At first, the changes were very small, so small that I did not even notice them. I still went to work every day, and helped my mother at home, but my thoughts were often busy with his words and opinions. I began to ask myself what Daniel would think before making simple decisions. Daniel liked to talk often. He asked where I was, who I was with, and what I was doing. He said it was because he cared about me and wanted to protect me. His voice was always calm, so I never felt afraid. I felt important that someone cared so much. I did not see any problem in answering his questions. Slowly, he started giving more advice. He told me which friends were good for me and which ones were not. He said some people were jealous and did not want to see me happy. At first, I laughed and ignored these comments, but after hearing them again and again, I began to believe him. I started meeting my friends less often. I told myself I was just busy. At work, I became quieter. I stopped sharing my thoughts and opinions. When customers spoke to me, I smiled, but my mind was somewhere else. I often checked my phone to see if Daniel had sent a message. His words had become important to me, like guidance I needed to feel safe. My family noticed a small change in me. My mother asked if everything was okay. I said yes and smiled. I did not want to worry her. I also did not want to explain feelings that I myself did not fully understand. Inside, I felt calm, but also strangely tired. Daniel often said he knew what was best for me. He said the world was dangerous and full of people who could hurt me. He said I was lucky to have someone who cared so deeply. Hearing this made me feel protected, but it also made me feel weak, like I could not survive on my own. One evening, I wanted to visit a friend, but Daniel said it was not a good idea. He said I should rest instead. I listened to him and stayed home. As weeks turned into months, the changes in my life became more noticeable. I did not feel sudden pain or fear. Instead, I felt a slow shift, like the ground moving quietly under my feet. I was still smiling, still working, still living, but something inside me felt different. I felt less sure of myself. Daniel became more involved in every part of my life. He wanted to know my plans before I made them. If I said I wanted to do something, he would suggest a better idea. His suggestions always sounded reasonable, so I listened. I told myself that he was wiser and more experienced. I believed trusting him was the right thing to do. I started doubting my own thoughts. When I felt unhappy, I told myself I was being ungrateful. When I felt confused, I told myself Daniel knew better. I stopped asking myself what I wanted. Instead, I asked what would keep everything calm and peaceful. My friendships grew weaker. Messages from friends became less frequent, and I did not try hard to reply. When they invited me out, I often made excuses. Daniel said they were a bad influence and did not understand me like he did. Hearing this again and again made me feel closer to him and farther from everyone else. At home, my mother noticed I was quieter. She said I looked tired. I smiled and said I was fine. I did not want to explain the strange heaviness in my heart. I did not even know how to explain it. I believed this was just part of growing up and being in a serious relationship. Sometimes, when I was alone, I felt an uncomfortable silence. I missed my old laughter and confidence. I missed making decisions without fear. But when Daniel called or messaged me, those feelings disappeared for a while. His attention felt like comfort, even though it was slowly becoming control. One night, I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. My eyes looked tired, and my smile felt forced. I told myself this was temporary. I told myself everything woe. By the time I realized something was wrong, I could not remember exactly when it had started. There was no single moment, no clear warning. It was like waking up one day and noticing that the room felt smaller, even though the walls had not moved. My life felt the same on the outside, but inside, I felt tight and uneasy. Daniel's presence was everywhere. His messages arrived early in the morning and continued until late at night. If I did not reply quickly, he asked if something was wrong. He said he worried about me. I apologized even when I had done nothing wrong. Slowly, saying sorry became a habit. At work, I no longer enjoyed talking to people. I finished my tasks quietly and avoided long conversations. I felt tired all the time, not because of work, but because my mind was never at rest. I was always careful, always thinking before I spoke, always afraid of saying the wrong thing. One afternoon, an old friend came to visit me at the shop. She smiled and hugged me, happy to see me after a long time. We talked for a few minutes, but I felt nervous. I kept looking at my phone. When Daniel's message arrived, asking who I was with, my hands started shaking. I replied quickly and ended the conversation with my friend. As she walked away, I felt a deep sadness that I could not explain. That evening, Daniel asked me why I looked upset. I told him I was just tired. He smiled gently and said I should rest more and avoid unnecessary people. His words sounded caring, but they made my chest feel heavy. I went to my room and sat alone, feeling confused. For the first time, I asked myself an honest question. Why was I afraid? Why did I feel guilty for simple things? I tried to remember the girl I used to be. She laughed freely. She trusted her instincts. She did not feel scared of making small choices. I started noticing patterns. Daniel often decided for me, but he called it advice. He limited my world, but he called it protection. He made me dependent, but he...
After that night of awareness, my thoughts refused to stay quiet. Even when I smiled during the day, my mind kept returning to the same questions. I began to notice how carefully I lived, how every small action passed through fear first. I realized this was not how life was supposed to feel. Daniel continued to act the same. He was calm, polite, and sure of himself. On the surface, nothing looked wrong. But now, I was watching more closely. One day at work, a customer complained unfairly. Normally, I would have spoken calmly and defended myself. This time, I stayed quiet and apologized, even though I knew I was right. Afterward, I felt angry at myself. I realized I had started apologizing for my existence. That evening, Daniel noticed I was quieter than usual. He asked if something was wrong. For a moment, I wanted to speak honestly. I wanted to tell him how small I felt. But fear stopped me. I smiled and said I was fine. His smile returned, satisfied, and the moment passed. Later, alone in my room, I felt tears in my eyes. I was not crying because of him alone. I was crying because I had lost my voice. I had slowly given it away, thinking it was love. That realization hurt more than anything else. I began writing in a small notebook. I wrote about my feelings, my fears, and my memories. Writing helped me remember who I was before all this. It reminded me that I once trusted myself. It reminded me that my thoughts mattered. As days passed, I became more aware of my emotions. I noticed when
The following morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The house was quiet, and the sun had not yet fully risen. I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the world slowly wake up. For the first time in months, I felt a small sense of peace. I realized that the outside world could be calm, even if my mind was restless. Daniel continued to message me throughout the morning, asking about my plans. I replied carefully, but I noticed a difference in myself. I no longer replied instantly. I paused, thought, and then wrote back. It was a small step, but it felt powerful. I felt that a tiny part of me was returning. At work, I tried to notice my own feelings instead of only following instructions from others. I smiled at customers because I wanted to, not because someone told me to. I spoke in small ways, expressing my opinion quietly. I realized I had been silent too long, and every word I spoke now felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. When I returned home, Daniel was waiting as usual. He noticed the small changes and asked why I seemed more thoughtful. I smiled but said nothing. I wanted to keep these feelings private, to understand them fully before sharing. That evening, I walked slowly in the park near my home, thinking about how small steps could grow into real change. I reflected on the past months. I saw clearly how subtle control had entered my life. It was never forceful, never violent. Instead, it was wrapped in kindness, care, and love. That realization made me stronger, not angry. I understood that awareness was the first step toward freedom. I also started journaling regularly. I wrote about every emotion, every fear, and every small victory. Writing became a way to organize my thoughts and recognize the subtle traps I had ignored. I began to trust my instincts again, slowly rebuilding the voice I had lost. At night, I sat by the window again, looking at the stars. I thought about courage, freedom, and self-respect. I did not have all the days that followed felt different, even though my routine seemed the same. I still woke up early, went to work, and helped around the house. But inside me, something had shifted. I was no longer completely silent or passive. I was learning to notice my feelings and to trust my own thoughts again. Each small decision felt like a step toward reclaiming my life. Daniel continued to be part of my daily world, calm and polite as always. He still gave advice, still asked questions about my day. But now, I listened, thought, and chose before answering. I realized that listening did not mean obedience. I could respect him without losing myself. This understanding brought a quiet strength I had not felt before. One afternoon, I wanted to go for a walk with a friend I had avoided for weeks. Daniel suggested it might be better to stay home, as the streets were crowded. I paused and considered his words, but then I decided to go anyway. The walk was short, but it felt liberating. I laughed with my friend, sharing memories and small joys. That simple act made me feel alive again. It reminded me that my world could expand, even under subtle pressures. At home, Daniel noticed small changes in me. He asked why I seemed more confident. I smiled, but I did not give him the full explanation. Some things I needed to discover on my own. I understood that I could coexist with him without being controlled. This was a new and powerful feeling. I was learning boundaries, something I had never fully understood before. My journaling became more detailed. I wrote about my past fears, my present steps, and my hopes for the future. Writing helped me recognize patterns, see the subtle ways my freedom had been restricted, and appreciate the small victories I had gained. Each word I wrote felt like a reclaiming of my voice. Slowly, I began to feel like the Lena I had been before Daniel's subtle control entered my life. Evenings became moments of reflection rather than fear. I watched